Hello, my name is Roman, and in this Linux Know-How episode I'm going to show you how you can install Linux without actually installing it. Okay, quick history lesson before we move on. In the very early days of Linux, you could either run Linux or something else, and then your computer was mostly spent. Later, we had the opportunity to run a so-called dual boot setup. So you inserted a CD or DVD later on and installed Linux alongside Windows or Mac OS, and that usually worked fine. Except when it didn't. There was always the potential of accidentally wiping your Windows installation while installing Linux, either through a bug or simply because you did something wrong, and that happened more often than not. And even when it worked, it required you to reboot every time you needed the other operating system. So if you just happened to need Windows for 5 minutes while using Linux, you had to reboot probably for another 10 minutes. Mind you, these were days when we didn't have SSDs. Booting took a while. Luckily, these days are over. So I'm going to show you how to use virtualization to install Linux on your computer without having to reboot, without having to worry about wiping your operating system, and even without CDs or DVDs. Almost every modern PC and Macintosh has the ability to virtualize itself so that you can run more than one instance of your computer. And that's really useful because it allows you to run more than one operating system at a time. Now, on a Macintosh, that feature is already available to you and you do not need anything else than a hypervisor, which we're going to install in a minute. On a PC, however, that feature might not be enabled by default. So to find out if you can actually use that feature and to turn it on, obviously, head into your BIOS settings and find something that's called like virtualization or Intel virtualization feature or whatever AMD calls it. And that's not something I can tell you exactly where to find because that varies from mainboard to mainboard, from manufacturer to manufacturer. Now on that ASUS board here, I can find it in the advanced features and the subset of CPU configuration. Now there's a lot going on about speeds and whatnot, active cores and so on, and finally Intel virtualization technology. Now I have this enabled, but I could just as well disable it here, and that's often the case when you just installed your CPU or your computer comes out of the box. So make sure that this is enabled and of course available. Otherwise it might not be possible to follow along in this video. Alright, in this video I'm going to use Windows 10, but the procedure is pretty much exactly the same in Mac OS. And if you use Linux, once you got VirtualBox, the tool we're going to use, installed, the procedure is exactly the same anyway. So if you want to follow along on one of these systems, don't let Windows scare you away. Okay, as I mentioned, we're going to use a piece of software called VirtualBox, which will be our hypervisor. Now, a hypervisor is a piece of software that sits between your real hardware or your host system, if you like, and the virtual computer, the guest system. In our case, that would be Windows as the host and Linux as the guest. So head over to www.virtualbox.org where you can download your free copy. Very important, this is a free software product in every way. Mostly every way. At least the core is licensed under the GPL version 2, which is great. So you can download your copy for Windows, Mac OS, Linux, or even Solaris. Good for all the Solaris users watching because then you can finally run Linux. And then there is the extension package. That one is not entirely free. It's free as in free beer, but it is proprietary software. For this tutorial, you do not need any of its features. However, I usually install the extension package regardless because it provides the fantastic RDP desktop, which allows me to connect to the virtual machine remotely, graphically. It supports USB, disk encryption, and even some other extra features. So it's up to you if you're comfortable with that license. If you're not, you do not need it. You're perfectly fine using just the core package. So please go ahead and download the core package for your operating system. In my case, that will be Windows. And if you so choose to use it, the extension package, which is the same for all supported platforms. And while you're at it, we need to download the actual Linux. Now in this video, I'm going to install an OpenSUSE Linux, and that will usually be or involve going here to the OpenSUSE.org website. You do not need to do this, by the way, and then find the disk image here, which will be a 4.7 gigabyte download for a DVD image or a network CD download. So in the end, you end up with an ISO file, and then you have to go through an installer and do all the partitioning and whatnot. But as you may remember, I promised an installation without an actual installation. And that's where this website comes in. So head over to www.osboxes.org. And what you can find there is ready-made Linux installations. Entire virtual hard drives with Linux installed, different distributions are available, that you just plug into your virtual machine and you're ready to go. And that is pretty awesome if you just want to test something, or in our case, we just want to get to know Linux without going through the fuss of installing it first. So head over here to the VM Images menu, select VirtualBox Images, and here you are. You have the choice, or the choice is yours. You can go with Arch Linux, Blackbox Linux, Calculate Linux, CentOS, Magia, Xubuntu, Ubuntu, probably even some Kubuntu and whatnot. As I said, I'm going to install OpenSUSE. The reason is primarily that their OpenSUSE image is pretty well done. Out of the box, it supports VirtualBox with all its drivers and so on, while that is not always the case for some of these other distributions. But don't let that stop you. It's still a great place where you can find all sorts of distributions ready to use. If you want to find the perfect distribution for you, this is a real good place to go. So go ahead and download the VDI image. In this case, I suggest you go for the 64-bit image. That only means that the VirtualBox you have could have more than 4 gigabytes of RAM. Usually you have a computer with 8 or probably 16, maybe even 32 gigabytes of RAM. So let's go use it. It's really 32-bit. I don't know, haven't used it in years. So go ahead, download that. The size is 1.3 gigabyte on each of these. So this will take a while unless you're blessed with an extremely fast internet access. So feel free to stop the video here, take a break, have some coffee or tea, and enjoy yourself. And when you come back, we can continue with the installation of VirtualBox, the extension package, and OpenSUSE itself. So see you in a minute. Okay, this is super awkward. Looking at the camera, not saying anything. All right, welcome back. And welcome back. I assume you've downloaded VirtualBox, probably the extension package, and the OpenSUSE image, which would be the biggest of them all. So the first thing you want to do is unpack that image. So use 7-zip to unzip the damn thing. Why did I just say damn? Don't use the word damn. Okay, welcome back. I assume you're done. Okay, welcome back. I assume you're done with the download. And you should end up, or should... Okay, welcome back. And Okay, welcome back. I assume your downloads are completed. You should now look at 2, probably 3 files. VirtualBox installer, probably the extension package if you choose to use it, and the actual Linux image. And that's the first thing you want to do. You want to unpack that. In my case, that's done by 7-zip. And you can just go ahead in there and say, give me that VDI file. That's what you want. So unpack that. Should take a few moments. And while that's going, I'm going to install VirtualBox. So double click on that. Yes, we want to install. So it's really just 1, 2, 3 install. You can just say, yes, you want all of this stuff in there. Yes, I do want all of this. So go ahead. While you're installing this, there may be a few warnings coming from Windows about VirtualBox trying to install some drivers. That is completely normal. These drivers provide access to the network, for example, and to your displays and whatnot. You can trust them. They're perfectly fine. Oracle is a company you can actually trust, so don't worry about that. Yes, I do want to start that. And here's the actual user interface. Not much to look at the moment, but enough to go into the preferences and say extensions and use this icon here. I mean, the icons in here are a bit weird, but you get used to it. So this is an add symbol, why ever it's yellow, I don't know. So head over to your downloads and you will see your extension package, which has the file extension vbox-extpack. That's an easy one to remember, right? Okay, yes, this is the description. Yes, we want to install that, and you will be presented with the personal end user eval or whatever. So I suggest you read all of this. If you do agree, do so by clicking on I agree. You can only do that once you scroll all the way down, by the way. All right, installed successfully. So now we have VirtualBox with its proprietary extension package. Up to you if you want it or not. All right, by now my VDI file has been unpacked, which is great. So we can go ahead and create a new virtual machine. And this is where all the fun really starts. That's the part where we install quote unquote, Linux from this particular hard drive. So click on new and you will be presented with this wizard here. And don't select type and version just yet, because the cool thing is when I call this OpenSUSE 01, for example, it automatically detects the kind of operating system you want to install and even the distro. That works for all of these distros in here. If you enter something like Debian, MyBox, whatever, it would select or pre-select the right distro for you. Quite nice to know. Okay, next, memory. In this machine, I have 32 gigabytes of RAM to spare. That doesn't really do anything except for running virtual machines. So that's very nice. If you don't have that much and 1 gigabyte is all you can spare, don't worry, you can still work with that. If you do have more RAM available, I suggest you give it 2 gigabytes, 4 gigabytes. In my case, I give it just 8,000 megabytes, so close to 8 gigabytes, just because I can. If you can, go ahead, enjoy yourself. All right, next step, the hard disk. And normally, if you're going to install your own Linux from scratch, you would say create a virtual hard disk now. But we're not going to do that. Remember, we downloaded a VDI file, and that is already a fully working hard drive. So instead, go ahead and say use an existing virtual hard disk file. So select it. In my case, it's stored in the downloads folder and called the OpenSUSE Tumbleweed 2016 12 64-bit VDI. Simple. It'll appear here, create, and you're done. Now you could go ahead and tweak this VM and change settings, change network settings, assign it more CPU cores, more memory, less memory. But for now, just start it, because we just want to get to see Linux, right? Okay, here we go. The VirtualBox starts and you're already in the OpenSUSE bootloader, which is awesome. Remember, we didn't install anything. So you just say, go ahead with Tumbleweed itself. and we should be presented with a login screen momentarily. The joys of booting something while doing a recording. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, so if you do not know the password, don't worry. Just head over here to the OSBoxes website. Username is OSBoxes, password is osboxes.org. And that's true for all of their boxes. I haven't seen a single OS box in there that has a different username or password. So if you ever forget these, just head over here and have a look. So I say osboxes.org, then make sure you remember that website. Login's coming. Yes, we've got a light bulb. Wonderful. Now, first login always takes a bit longer simply because there is a lot of init stuff going on. And here we go. Wired connection. So we do have an internet connection, I would assume, and we have a working operating system. Now, as you notice, this is just a small window, but no? Yes, very good. This is the reason I chose OpenSUSE to begin with, because it has all these virtual guest drivers already installed. You can just make this a big window. You can even go ahead and say, make this full screen. And then it will just tell you how to get out of full screen. Read this, really read this, and make sure you understand this. Otherwise, you might be trapped in that full screen mode and can't get out. So in short, it's the host key, which in my case is the right Alt key. You can see that down here, which one is yours. And F. So if I switch to full screen, now my Windows desktop is completely gone. And you see, if I hit the Windows key or Alt Tab, I can't get out of it. But if I choose my host key, right Alt in my case, in your case it might be another key, just check it out here before you go in, then I'm out and I can use Windows or whatever you're running as such. Once you got this down, you can just say, well, don't bother me again about this, I know what I'm doing. Okay, so as you see, every time I change the size of my desktop, the size of the desktop actually changes correctly. In some of their boxes, in some of these OS boxes, that's not the case. So keep that in mind. If that doesn't work, you need to install some sort of VirtualBox drivers. Okay, so once you installed Linux, you are free to explore Linux as you please. I just try, okay, I'm a little stupid here. I wanted to start Firefox and I'm doing so now. As I said, first start is always a bit time consuming because of all this init stuff going on. But all in all, you have a Linux distribution. If I say, give me a console, then I have a console here and can do all these wonderful things on the Linux command line. So from here, it's up to you to explore Linux. I will do a lot of episodes about how you can get started with different parts of Linux, but this is one of the easiest ways to get it installed. I still recommend that you go through an actual installation process. It is not hard, it is not difficult, but this is a great way to get started. And this is also a great way to explore different distributions without installing it. Some of them are really easy to install, like let's say Ubuntu. Others are a little bit more advanced. OpenSUSE, for example, has a very advanced installer, but it isn't very difficult. And others like Arch Linux or Gentoo Linux, God forbid, great distribution, but it doesn't have an installer. You have to install Linux all manually or mostly manually. Not particularly difficult, but you need to know what you're doing. And that way you can download a Gentoo box and see if once it's installed, is it for you? If it is, then it might be worth learning how to install something like Arch Linux or Gentoo Linux or CentOS or whatever. You don't need to waste hours upon hours to just install it and get it running. If you you know, if you do that and you figure out, well, actually this isn't my Linux, then that's a lot of wasted time. So I really suggest you go download a few of these OS boxes, use VirtualBox or whatever you have. You can also use Parallels or VMware or any of these other virtualization products. They're all pretty much the same. And well, enjoy yourself. All right, that's it from here. Thank you very much for watching. Please do like the video if you got something out of it and subscribe to the channel. If you disliked it, please give me some criticism why you didn't like it so that this channel can, well, grow and get better. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video. Bye.